Welcome back to How to Be a Better DM, the official podcast of Monsters.rent. I'm Justin Lewis.
And I'm Tanner Wayland.
And we are here to help you tell better stories for yourself and your players as you dungeon master sessions of D&D, Dungeons & Dragons. We'd like to give you some quick announcements. We actually have one before the show, and then after the show, if you want to stick around, we have some more announcements then as well. But first, let's talk about this. Tired of being alone? Are you tired of not having any of your players understand you? Are you tired of never truly belonging? Well, you're in luck. All you need to do is join the Guild. The Guild is a unique and exclusive experience that is only open to Dungeon Masters. It is a full community focused on helping ease your DMing burdens. Want to meet other DMs? Join the Guild. Want to discuss your homebrew ideas with people who would appreciate it instead of just telling your cat? Join the Guild. Want to find a place where all your wildest dreams will come true? Join the Guild. Go to monsters.rent/guild and sign up today for free. Wait, that can't be right. Chuck, can you check this again? Is this supposed to be... What? Oh, they're serious? It's free? Oh, okay. All right. Yes, go to monsters.rent/guild and sign up today for free, even though they are crazy for giving this away for free. Common side effects may include burping, sneezing, laughing, breathing, hearing, listening, tasting, farting, critting, sarcasm, and in extreme cases, explosive diarrhea. Awesome. With that out of the way, we can get into today's show.
Quintel was used to fancy occasions and fancy company. While the typical citizen may associate forest elves with simple, easygoing forest life, Quintel could attest that elves had their moments of high society and high expectations. Before leaving his home forest of Rennes-sur-Fault, Quintel was nearly stifled by that very pressure. Present, his father, the central elder, would firmly request. Stand at peace, but stand straight. As a child, he never understood the apparent contradiction. How could he be both relaxed as a twisting willow and yet as tall, stiff, and straight as the trees that towered above their homes? The pressure was nice to escape, as he left as soon as he came of age. However, he came to crave that at peace yet tense balance that the elves had cultivated once he went out among foreign groups and cultures. Men and dwarves especially made relaxing, quote-unquote, an art form, or at least a craven indulgence. Drowning once again in a sea of slovenly acquaintances and friends, the elf wished, to his own surprise, that he could have experienced an ounce of that easy, practiced grace of his people. And so, when the captain of his group, Lundar, informed everyone that they would be visiting the governor's home for dinner that evening, he felt elated. Yes, they were going there to ask for a favor, but Quintel was sure that he would get some of the etiquette, culture, and perhaps the grace that he had been starving for. Hello, and welcome back to How to Be a Better DM. My name is Tanner Wayland, and together we will learn about how to prepare the best adventures and environments for our players to enjoy, and frankly for us to enjoy as well. Thank you for coming and listening, well, not coming, but listening at least. I really appreciate that, and honestly, there's a lot going on for us. First off, we were supposed to have a one-shot this Saturday the 17th. I was supposed to run it. I had a great campaign, one-shot session ready, and but you know, life happens. My wife's grandma died last week, so I'm actually going to be going to a funeral that day. And Justin did, out of the kindness of his heart, and that's kind of what makes him a great friend, he did offer. He's like, hey, I'll take over, and that's what we planned on. However, some of the players have had to change things, so as of now, we're working on rescheduling that one shot for the next couple, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. We'll keep you updated because, and this is really cool, we're going to be streaming that game so that you can watch. It's going to be on our website, betterdungeonmaster.com/watch. But yeah, keep an eye out. We'll be announcing on Instagram and probably putting that link in the newsletter as well as the show notes for this. Otherwise, we have. I mean, that's not the only one coming up. We actually have another one shot that we're very excited for. We're gonna have a guest DM. This is big. First time that we've had one on for our show for our listeners. For example, Robbie, or Bone Daddy, as he's affectionately known on the podcast, This Dungeon is Occupied, which you would have heard because we've actually interviewed them before. They're great. Love them. Robbie, he's going to be running a horror-themed adventure in October. And so we'll keep you updated as we get closer to that. But we'll have that watch link there. I think we were pretty much filled up. I think there might be one space left for his. Either way, I'm going to have the sign-up link. Just all you need to do is sign up for our newsletter, and there is a link there for you to sign up for the one-shot. Otherwise, like I just mentioned, the newsletter, it's a great source of content, just, to see how we're doing, but also, get some creative homebrew creations that we've made, and also just, some suggestions, some further tips, because, heaven knows that all of us could be better DMs in various ways. But with no further ado, let's get into the main topic today, which is D&D etiquette. So, when I say etiquette, you're probably thinking about a few things. You're probably thinking about maybe fancy dinners where forks are supposed to be in a certain way, and you're supposed to have, elbows off the table. There's a certain way that you eat, or maybe you're thinking about parties or Victorian dances, for all I know. Whatever it is, oftentimes etiquette isn't thought of when you think of D&D. And I think there's a reason. When we think of D&D, we think about friends sitting around a table, snacking, role-playing, rolling dice, and, generally just being very relaxed. And the idea of etiquette is kind of the opposite. Well, at least it seems that way. Kind of seems stiff and formal, like you're around strangers and you're trying to impress them. What I really wanted to get across with this principle of D&D etiquette is that etiquette is not just about fancy settings, right? D&D at its core is you getting together with people. And at its core, etiquette is about how you act in a group setting without offending, insulting, or upsetting others. And that, when you decontextualize etiquette like that, honestly, you can see that there's multiple ways that it can improve your tabletop gaming. Now, in terms of etiquette being stuffy and for strangers, I really want to emphasize that most arguments that happen in relationships with someone that you've known for a while, at work, with people that you've worked with for a while, or with friends and acquaintances playing D&D, most of the conflicts you're going to have are, issues of communication. And oftentimes it comes because you weren't thinking about how you were communicating something with others. And I don't know if you guys have ever done this, but there's been a few times where I've gone down YouTube rabbit holes where, there's certain YouTube channels where they will catalog Reddit, stories on Reddit, and share them of D&D disasters, players who kind of take over the game or try and force other players to act in a way that, that doesn't make them comfortable or isn't how they feel like they want to act. DMs doing the very same thing. Whatever it is, there's so many ways where when somebody feels like they're in a quote unquote comfy setting, a comfy gaming setting, they kind of forget these principles of, of friendliness, of being polite. They talk over each other. They don't, find out what others are into. They become very self-focused. And honestly, that's just, not only is it rude, it's also a great way to turn a fun game into the kind of one that everybody's just trying to find an excuse to end, right? Like they're just trying to get out of that campaign, wait a couple months until the bad taste is out of their mouth, uh, and then they'll start with someone else who doesn't irk them. And so, I mean, there's so many reasons why it's worth encouraging proper etiquette with your players, and your players with you, and this is even more true nowadays. So, like, I didn't realize, because honestly, I play a lot with friends. I don't do D&D, or at least I didn't before the podcast. I didn't play with people that I hadn't met before, right? They were typically acquaintances, like really friendly acquaintances, or like, friends I had known for a while. But more and more nowadays, especially with Roll20, with Discord, with various groups where you can kind of reach out and get an online group, etiquette becomes even more important, right? It becomes like paramount to keeping a story going, and also to making friends, right? Within an online space. Or if you're the type of person who's, really good at bringing together people that you don't know, or friends of friends, and you want that to be a space that people enjoy coming to and feel like they can be heard, but also, um, that it's kind of a respectful environment, then I think that should be a goal. Honestly, it kind of feels like something that should just be expected, right? Like, oh, why are we even talking about etiquette? Isn't this kind of common sense that you don't act like a jerk? You don't throw off certain social expectations. Um, Honestly, I would agree typically, but I've just seen that some people get too comfy, or they're a little thoughtless, and not in the like, oh, you're a jerk, you're thoughtless in the way that they don't realize certain bad habits that they get into, right? When it comes to role playing. So that's what that's kind of the why of etiquette being important, is to create that friendly space and environment, where everybody feels like they want to go, because everybody kind of has a base level of social awareness, understanding, politeness. Now, as far as I do have some examples and specific principles I want you to keep in mind. But first, let us continue with the story. Lundar, Quintel, and their companions walked up the cobbled path leading to the governor's large home. Before anyone could knock, the main door swung open, and a finely dressed servant bowed to greet them. This way. He motioned them through a finely decorated hall of polished stone. There they saw more servants, setting a long table with silverware, dishes, and candles. In the corner, violins played a soothing, conversational tune. Quintel preened as he was sat at the table. Looking at the measured poise of the servants, he felt like a civilized elf for the first time in ages. He had even worn his finest robes, and he stood as the governor and his wife entered the hall. Quintel's companions were less quick to rise, however, looking like children allowed to dine at the table with adults. The food was delicious, and the conversation pleasant, until Lundar cleared his throat to ask, Governor, sire, we have come to ask for aid in a quest of most importance. We have come to this town at the behest of a man named Jordell, who believes that your town is in great danger. We seek your cooperation, if you'll allow. The governor's practiced smile broke, and a bead of sweat rolled from his forehead as he responded, Jordell, I have never heard of such a man, but I can assure you that this town is perfectly safe. You will certainly find other places with needs far greater than ours. He laughed in a nervous way and abruptly moved to stand up. His cup tumbled over, spilling violet wine on his trousers and across the table. Cursing, he simply waved over his shoulder at the sitting group before stomping off. Quintel started, surprised at the sudden change in mood. The violins had gone quiet as they finished eating. Once they finished, they were ushered out into the cold night. To continue with our topic on D&D etiquette, here are some principles that I thought of, and a few that I looked up online in regards to what other DMs find to be helpful in encouraging in players, but certainly, practicing for themselves. First, and this is something that I can't stress enough, is the importance of listening. There's so many times when you want to talk, because I think everybody that comes to D&D, if they wanted a story, they would have read a book or watched a movie. If they're tabletop role playing, they want to be involved. And so with that in mind, it's normal for people to talk, sometimes talk over others. But what I'm just going to encourage you to do is find more opportunities to listen. Now, the great news here is that you can kind of do both by asking a lot of questions. As a DM, that's especially true, right? For example, if you are confused by what a player wants to do, keep asking. If players are having issues, make sure that you're not so distracted planning your next step that you aren't paying attention. You're just like, oh, what am I going to do next? And you're unable to see where your players have hit a hitch in the gameplay kind of flow, right? Because there's many times when maybe they're confused about how to deal with a certain challenge, or they are confused about how to get the most out of a role-play encounter, or it's a battle and you can tell that someone's getting frustrated. If you pay attention, if you listen during those times, rather than rushing them, caveat there, it's okay to rush. No, once again, I hate that word rush. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that it's okay to have a standard or an expectation for quickness, for speed, rather. But while you do have that, you also need to make sure that if someone's stumped by something, then take the time to talk with them to make sure that they feel that their plans, their goals, their confusion is understood and being addressed. And also encourage this with your players. Honestly, if they start, if somebody has a hard time explaining themselves, or is quieter, and then they start to talk, but then another more boisterous player, begins talking over them because like, oh, that's the quiet friend of the group, and they don't have a loud voice. And, when they do start talking, they quickly stop talking once getting talked over. You need to be aware of that. You need to know who those people are, and you need to know when to listen to them and when to be like, oh, hey, John, I noticed that Jason was speaking. I want to hear what you have to say, but I wanted him to finish talking first. If you encourage that, then, and also, if it becomes a real problem, talk with, in this situation, John, quote unquote, who is the more talkative one. If you ask them in private to, be aware of that and not like be like, hey, that's negative, but instead be like, this other person is more quiet person, we need to encourage them to feel comfortable to speak, and that we're going to listen. If you encourage that, then that's going to make it a much more equal experience, which will make it a more fun experience because, with D&D, much like life, variety is the spice, and that means a variety of voices, variety of opinions. And so for you and your players, that's going to be so much better. Second, and this is true of players and also DMs. I mean, it's true of everyone. I think DMs, it's less of an issue, but be prepared. That's a huge principle of D&D etiquette. If you come to a session unprepared, you don't have your, in a player's case, you don't have your character sheet. Or as a DM, you're spending forever getting set up while everybody's, just waiting. Whatever it is, the people that slows the flow. Sometimes it makes it so you just, over time, it makes it so you can experience less. And I can tell you right now, there's some people who are going to get annoyed by that. Typically, I'm the kind of person who's willing to give, the benefit of the doubt, but I know I'm in the minority there in terms of impatience and people wanting, expecting a certain standard of, hey, if you come to the session, be ready. That means dice ready. That means, mini maps, everything. We need to be patient with people when they aren't prepared, but for you, your goal should always be to be prepared. But honestly, there's another form of unpreparedness that I think does really, get my goat to sound like an old person. It's when you're unprepared with what to do during a combat encounter. When it's your turn, when it's gone through everyone else, I know that, it gets easy to just focus on what they're doing, but you should have an idea of what you'd like to do so that your turn can be over, as fast as possible, but certainly within a minute, right? If you're able to, and this is hard depending on the classes, right? If you're a wizard, it gets easy to be like, oh my goodness, someone just changed, another player just changed, where their character was, and that changes my plans. That's fine. And I think people understand that. But I think for everybody's peace of mind and also their patience, just trying to be quick regardless and realizing that, what, you could take that extra 2 minutes, 2, 3, 4 minutes and come up with the quote unquote perfect move. But, sometimes an imperfect move that's really quick will get the job done and everybody will be much more happy with you and also happier with the session because you just get through more as you're quick with your turns. So otherwise, I want to say something, and it kind of I touched on this with the listening principle, but equal spotlight. I'm trying to think of how to phrase this, but basically, equality equal presence is probably a good way to put it. Is an important part of D&D. I think with most groups, there's always those people who are more comfortable, maybe a little bit more invested, and they're going to have more opinions. They're going to speak more when the group's deciding. They're going to be one of the first people to talk to your random NPC that comes up to them. While it's not great to shut those people down, something that you should really strive for is to focus on the people who, naturally kind of sit in the back seat. And there's a few ways you can do this, right? You can make sure that they have their character backstory is, maybe integrated more often, or you bring it up more often so that they have a specific thing to deal with, right? Now, if it's an NPC, instead of them just coming up to the group in general, maybe when the group is a little, spread out across the road or or they're walking through town looking at stalls, you can narratively kind of, ask what everybody's doing. And then with that narrative, basically, place your NPC or your plot point in front of, a couple of those players who typically take that back seat. I think that that's a way that you can really encourage it to not, your campaign not to feel lopsided in terms of player interaction. And then, another thing that this feels standard, but I just, important to note, don't raise your voice or insult other players. It's pretty basic, but, especially if there comes to be like a decision and you feel like, oh, these players, or my fellow players, if you're in the party, my fellow players are just making a bad decision. Oh, this is gonna be so bad. Remember that um, that your tabletop campaign can be much more civil and much more fine with messed up quote unquote decisions than most other situations in life, right? Like politics, that can be a mess because everybody believes that oh, if the other side wins, then the world's screwed up. Here's the great thing about tabletop role playing. Let's say that you have to get into that castle, and part of the group is saying go through the front gate, and the other group is saying, hey, go through the sewers, of the castle. While it feels incredibly important, if you get outvoted, here's a great thing. One, you got a DM who can, notice that like, hey, players are choosing something a little bit less smart, and they can, theoretically show them that they chose something bad, while also hopefully, not ruining the game for them. You have to trust your DM to some extent to uh to be cool. That sounds a little juvenile, but like, be cool about it and not, not bust your balls on, hey, you guys need to be so careful with every choice. That it's a game first and foremost. And so you as a player and you as a DM, if your fellow players are making poor decisions and you get outvoted, then it's fine to go with the flow, right? You're going to have a different experience, that's for sure. It's going to be a little bit harder, but there's also probably going to be more drama. And it's going to honestly probably make for a better game than if you just did if you always did the safe choice. And so, don't insult others people for wanting to do differently. Don't raise your voice at them. Realize that, failure in the context of a game can actually be quite fun. And they, same as you, if they don't see an issue, they're going to learn from their experience. And that's a beautiful thing about tabletop role playing, is because you have a safe environment to do that, to mess up and learn from it rather than getting mad that you didn't choose perfectly all the time. Now, as a DM, this is as a DM and a player, but I would say mostly as a DM, the principle of requesting cooperation, or requesting specific behaviors is important. So when I'm talking about etiquette here, many times it would be nice if players and DMs thought of their own behavior on their own, but you can't always expect that, because people change. They sometimes they change on their own. Sometimes it takes them a long time. And if you're getting impatient, once again, to the last point, don't raise your voice. Instead, I would say request that they, change their behavior. Don't demand it and be like, hey, you can't play if you keep doing that. Don't, don't, try and point them out in a very embarrassing way. Instead, and if you do this as a group request, Or, after the session is over and you're texting with that player who had an issue, just it's okay to ask somebody to behave differently, right? The way you ask is important. Don't demean them. Don't make them feel, like they're a problem child of your group or anything. But just, be like, hey, I noticed that when everybody didn't go along with your plan, it was kind of rough. You know, uh, how are you feeling? Listen to them, and then be like, hey, I understand where you're coming from. It is a game. Can I ask you in the future? If a vote happens like that, are you willing to be cool? Are you willing to be understanding and go along with the group? Asking a direct request as a DM like that in a respectful but clear way, that can do so much for you and for your players. So that's what I really recommend as DMs. Learn to request certain behaviors, certain kinds of etiquette, because this is a podcast about how to be a better DM, and DMs, it's kind of their role to help players to be better players, right? And just sitting back and hoping that they'll learn isn't always the best way. So you kind of have to take that more direct approach of just asking, and a way that you can honestly, hopefully avoid a lot of repetitive requests or a lot of requests that have the chance to blow up into a personal conflict. A way to avoid that was with the final principle: set expectations. We talk about this a lot with like session zeros, or when you get together with a new party. You have to set expectations, not only for like, hey, this is what the campaign's about, but further about how you guys are going to interact. And so, sharing some of the things that I've shared here, that's a great way to start. But honestly, you can come up with your own list in terms of like decision making, in terms of how long people have to do combat, in terms of what people are expected to bring and be prepared for, whatever it is. You have the chance during a session 0 or session 1, early on, to set those expectations, and then from there, honestly, the better you do at setting expectations, the easier it will be to request different behavior, because you can turn to that player or those players in general and be like, hey guys, how we talked about not talking over each other. I've noticed that has changed a lot recently, with the last few campaigns, or sessions, and I just want to really reinforce that, because I know that some people, have louder voices, some people are more, firm, but we really want this to be an equal thing. And if you do that after you've already set that expectation at the start and everybody agreed to it, then, that's very easy criticism, because it's like, oh, yeah, we forgot. Sorry, we'll do better. And then it's just reinforcing that behavior at that point. And so, yeah, these aren't all of the principles of D&D etiquette, for sure, because that's, you could write a book about that. And half of the book, no, like most of the book actually, would just be, typical etiquette among friends, right? There is some specific to D&D in terms of, the preparation, the how people interact with like combat, role playing, things like that. But a lot of it is just that kind of common, decency or respect that you need to give other people when you're talking with them and hanging out with them. And so, at the heart of the golden rule, at the heart of etiquette is the golden rule, which is, if you treat others how you'd like to be treated, and even further, if you take the time to find out how they would prefer to be treated, you're going to have a great time. So honestly, go out, make your gaming group a wonderful place to be in. And until next time, let's roll initiative.
Thank you for listening to today's show. We really appreciate your support and your patronage. We have a few more announcements to go over. First,
Did you ever fall in love with the library as a kid? It was a place where you could experience 1,000 stories without having to buy 1,000 books. That is what Monsters.Rent can do for your D&D campaign. You can rent and swap out as many quality miniature monsters and creatures for your D&D party as you could ever want, without having to buy them. You can rescue villagers from a kobold camp, or lead your party through the Fighting Forest, or many more adventures. We're coming out with new bundles all the time. Just sign up for our subscription to get access to your own personal library of minis. Go to monsters.rent to find out more. That's the website. Monsters, with an S, .rent. Get your library pass to a world of minis today.
We also wanted to let you know that today's episode is sponsored by Stardust and Dragons. I'm going to let one of the cast of Stardust and Dragons, Christian Hatcher, and his crew tell you a little bit more about it.
This August, a new adventure podcast is coming to a platform near you, filled with action,
You one of the two of them. We can't keep taking hits like that.
drama,
Everything that she's been doing, everything she's going to do, finally sets in.
and stardust.
Help! Help! Someone, please!
Find out more about this epic odyssey at stardustanddragons.com, where adventure awaits in the stars.
That's all the announcements we have today. Again, thank you so much for everything you do for us. You make this show possible. Like we said before, we'll be back next week with another great episode, and until then, let's go ahead and roll initiative.